This is me, and this is my new hardcore world. And in this video, I'm going to be trying to survive 100 days in Minecraft Hardcore. Minecraft Hardcore mode is one of the hardest modes to play survival Minecraft on. Mobs are smarter and deal more damage on this mode, and most importantly, you only have one life, so no respawning. For these 100 days, I have 3 goals in mind. I want to beat the game, which means to kill the Ender Dragon. I want to kill the Wither in order to get a beacon and achieve a full set of netherite armor. Will I be able to do it? Well, stick around to find out. As I loaded into my new hardcore world, I managed to spot over the hills a village that'd be very useful to me early on. And running over to this tree, I started chopping it down with my bare hands. It wasn't the most comfortable thing, but it'd have to do for now. I made a crafting table and crafted myself basic wooden tools, and going over to this cave near the surface, I grabbed myself some stone and made some stone tools, which I was able to use to get coal and iron. I knew that I wanted to get iron armor and iron tools pretty early on, which would be a huge help for me, especially to protect myself against mobs that'd be trying to kill me. So smelting it up, I then decided to make myself my first piece of iron armor and a shield, which would help block any enemy attacks. And on the top of this hill, I spotted a desert temple, which was really close to the village. I got so fortunate with this spawn. So I decided to go loot the village first, and then I'd head over to the desert temple after. I found some decent loot, with the emeralds in the saddle being especially useful to me. I grabbed the village's hay bales, and I got some more food, since not having enough food in this mode was a constant threat always lurking in the background. And I decided to spend the night at the village, and that was my first day. Day 2, I continued exploring the village and was greeted by the local townsfolk. In pillaging the village, I got some sugarcane and some wheat, which would be very useful to me later on. And this Iron Golem sacrifice will not be forgotten, but will forever be remembered. And this poppy will be placed in remembrance of him. Using the saddle I just got, I tamed this horse. And with my newfound friend, I made my way over to the desert temple in order to loot it. Placing my newfound friend in the pit right next to the desert temple, I made my way inside and began exploring it. I looked around and made sure that there were no other enemies nearby that could kill me. I knew I had to be very careful in this next part. This booby trap could be set off and the TNT could kill me. And getting some decent loot, I made my way out of the desert temple where I had my first experience with death. 2 skeletons ganged up on me, reducing me to almost half my health. While I was escaping from the other skeletons, this other one managed to get me down to almost 2 hearts and continued shooting at me. I knew if I turned and ran, it would probably take me out, so I knew I had to fight it. And killing it, I decided that I had to go back to the village. It was the safest bet for me to continue this hardcore world. And fending off the mobs, I made my way inside, and that was the end of day 2. The next morning, I went back to the desert temple to recover my newfound friend. And giving him the iron horse armor that I found in the desert temple, we both made our way back to our spawn chunks, or where I spawned. And here, I decided that I'd set up camp. In exploring the surrounding area, I managed to find this really cool ravine. And then I decided to complete my set of iron armor. Then I planted some sugarcane near the beach, and then I started my next farm, which for now would be for wheat. Taking my new horse on a journey around to discover and explore what was near, we found another village with not too many villagers in it, but seeing that it was nighttime, I decided to put my new horse in the stable and spend the night here. Day 4, I explored the village and found some wacky bugs in the terrain, and seeing something poking out from the side, I decided to go take a look at it. And it turns out it was a pillager outpost. So I decided to save it and not touch it. It would definitely be useful for something I have planned in the future. And then getting some more food, I decided to head back to the village. The next morning, I decided to journey back home with my trusty steed. And upon arriving there, I got straight to work in setting up a strip mine. I knew that strip mining was the easiest and the most efficient way to get diamonds. But there was a problem. I ran into this huge cave and decided to leave it for exploring tomorrow. Day 6, I didn't really do much. I just spent gathering resources in the cave, like redstone, coal, and iron. I decided to start a strip mine in a completely new direction, since I knew that in the caves, more mobs could spawn and there would be a higher risk of me dying. So I continued mining and got some gold, iron, and some more coal. And making my way back up, I started to set up some pastures for a sheep farm and a cow farm, which would be very useful to me in the long run with leather and wool. The next morning, a creeper tried to sneak up on me and take me out, but I saw him sooner and struck first. Then I lured some sheep and cows into their pens and bred them together. My farms were taking shape. Next, I harvested and replanted some sugarcane from my farm next to the riverbank. And by the time I finished, night was soon approaching. I started lighting up my surroundings near my base to prevent any mobs from spawning. And then I set off on a journey with Bruno, yeah, that's his new name, to check out my surroundings a little further out. I stumbled upon two desert villages right next to each other and began to pillage the villages. There's a rhyme for you. It was in the blacksmith that I found my first diamond and some obsidian, but of course it wasn't legitimately earned. Bruno and I continued on our journey through the day, and as night was approaching, we found another village and decided to spend the night there. I got some decent loot from the village, including the shiny new diamond horse armor that was going straight on Bruno. Then, after saying our goodbyes, we kept going and decided to spend the night at yet another village we had found. Stumbling into yet another village, I pillaged and ran. We then finally found our way back home, and I stored all the good loot we got from our adventures. I upgraded some furnaces into smokers, which would be handy to cook food, and then called it a night. I bred my cows and sheep the next morning, and also added some blast furnaces to the collection. I then went mining for some resources and diamonds, and finally found my first legit diamonds next to a lava pool. I found about 6 more diamonds, and then I headed back up to the surface to make myself a diamond pickaxe and an enchantment table. Using the bookshelves I had, I laid the beginning foundation for my enchantment table. And then I finished the day off by adding a second level to my wheat farm. The very next day, I completed the bookshelves for my enchantment table, allowing me to get the max enchant for any item, level 30. I decided to enchant my pickaxe and got a pretty good enchantment. Next up, I crafted myself a diamond chestplate and got lapis to enchant it. And instead, this time I got a pretty bad enchantment on it, so I made a grindstone and disenchanted it. I went mining after and discovered my first mineshaft, where I was surprised by an enemy I had never encountered before. The flying creeper, who was crazy enough to jump in front of me, almost taking me out, but thankfully he didn't blow up right away. That could have been deadly. Then I finally got enough levels to enchant my chestplate again, and this time I actually got a good enchantment. After breeding to get more XP, I then enchanted my bow and got infinity, so now I'd never have to worry about arrows ever again. I continued the grind for diamonds, and I came across an 8 vein, and I got some 3 other diamonds, with which I was able to use to make legs and boots for myself. I got Death Strider and Prot on my boots, but no Unbreaking, and I got Prot 4 and Unbreaking on my legs, a pretty good enchant. I then started to set up my next farm, which would be for chickens this time, and then right after, I continued some housekeeping on the farm. I yoinked some obsidian because I wanted to go to the nether, and then I found some more diamonds. And with these last diamonds that I managed to get, I was able to make myself a complete set of diamond tools. Then I got the luckiest enchant on anything that I've ever gotten before. A maxed out, enchanted helmet with everything I'd ever need. Throwing away my old iron armor, cause I didn't need that anymore, I then started to suit up. Day 28, I enchanted a crossbow that I had made and began preparing to go to the Nether. I would need to be prepared for any possibility. And after I came out on the other end of the portal, I was very defensive and I had my shield up, ready for a surprise or anything that'd come at me. Once it was clear I was safe, I then began to explore a little, and it looked like I had spawned right next to a bastion. I didn't want to go there yet until I was fully geared, because piglin brutes and bastions hit really hard and do a lot of damage. I then lit up my area and encountered my first piglin. It came swinging at me, but all I had to do was keep my distance and I'd be fine. I got some natural resources on the surface and continued looking around. I then decided I'd go back home, and on another day I'd look for the Nether Fortress. Hey, so unfortunately the footage from day 29 and half of day 30 got corrupted, and so I'm not able to show you me discovering the Nether Fortress and getting my first couple of blaze rods, but you'll be able to see me go into it in a couple of in-game days. Sorry about that. Day 30, I traded with piglins a bit after coming from the Nether Fortress, and slowly but surely I made my way back to my portal. When I came through, I saw that it had created a completely new portal again. I'd have to fix that later. I added a brewing stand to our work section and then started getting to work on my next project, building my house. Day 32, I changed the area where the Nether portal had spawned in the Nether to match up with where it was in the overworld, and that seemed to fix the problem I had earlier, bringing me back to the correct portal. I enchanted a new diamond axe that I had freshly crafted and spotted a patrol out. This would be my first encounter ever with pillagers, and it looked as though they hurt themselves more than they hurt me. Once they were out the way though, I began building up the walls to my home, laying its foundation and terraforming around it. I used iron doors so my home wouldn't be broken into, and grabbed myself some food from my farms. I didn't want my home to be too complicated, so I settled for a smooth stone slab roof. And that night, while I was lighting up my farm, tragedy struck. I wasn't paying attention and a creeper snuck up on me, blowing up my sheep farm and messing everything up. What a mess! I'd have to deal with this tomorrow. Then, the next morning, I blocked off and repaired my sheep farm and took care of the sheep infestation in my land. I got a really good enchant on my sword next, and a really good enchant on my shovel too. Then I did a little bit of detailing on the outside of my house and finished the foundation. After completing the foundation, I continued to detail my house, adding cornerstones and lanterns as well as more windows and an entranceway. And just like that, my house was finished. I used the only mending book I had on my pickaxe since its durability was getting low, and I then brewed some potions in which I could use later. And then I started laying out my storage system, and that night I found a zombie villager, so now my potions of weakness would be put to use. Zombie villagers are very helpful in hardcore mode, since curing one will give you discounted prices on trades, helping you get special enchantments and more emeralds. So I trapped him and then I began his curing process, and by the very next morning he was fully cured. I then started the long process of making him a librarian and trying to get mending books from him. I was very tempted by this trade that he offered me, Unbreaking 3 books for 1 emerald. I knew from personal experience that to get Unbreaking 3 was pretty rare, and I was thinking ahead, knowing that once I got my elytra I would need Unbreaking, and now I could even put it on some of my tools that I didn't have it on. So I decided to settle for it now, and another time I'd get mending. Then I started to build a separate hut for the villagers, which would only be temporary. I began sorting my chests, waiting for night, so I could transport my new librarian to his temporary home. Then that night, I fought some mobs in order to get more XP, and found this pretty rare mob, a zombie in enchanted iron gear. I started organizing my interior inside my home, relocating my furnaces and my workstations and enchantment table and my nether portal. That night, I found what I was looking for, another zombie villager which I could cure. This one, I would turn into a Fletcher. Day 44, I took care of some matters at the farm, and then I tried to get the stick trade from this cured villager. And then I traded with him and leveled him up some. I took advantage of that night to relocate him to where the other villager was. Now he'd have a buddy, and I tried to get these two to breed together, but for some reason it wasn't working. Then I got prepared to go back to the nether, and I made my way to the fortress. I went to the fortress mainly with the goal in mind to stock up on blaze rods, and after I did so, I went back home. After observing these two and seeing how they weren't breeding, I came up with my next project. I was going to build a villager breeder. And before long, I had the base complete and I just needed my villagers. Thankfully, that night I lured them into the breeder with not too many problems. And taking a look at my armor, I saw that the durability was getting low and I needed to repair it. So now I would definitely need mending books. By day 49, my breeder was coming along well and I had finished it in no time. Then I harvested and replanted some crops and bred my animals. I also got this achievement when I was connecting a bridge to the nearby basalt delta from my portal. And then once I got home, I saw that my villager breeder was actually working as planned. I then went fishing for about 2 days, and I got some pretty decent loot, and I used some villagers from my villager breeder to get zombie villagers, so I'd get cheap prices on trades. After curing them both, I turned one into a librarian who would give me mending books. I leveled him up, and surprisingly, I got another book I had wanted thrown into the mix, Fortune 3. I immediately put it on my pickaxe for now. I was very tempted by this offer of Silk Touch, but I decided against it. And then I got what I was looking for, Looting 3, which would help me get better loot from mobs. I then put mending on all of my armor and began repairing it by killing mobs and breeding my livestock. Next, I started to set up a new pasture for pigs this time, and I lured them in. Day 58, I began to build one of my first fully automatic farms. It would be a sugarcane farm where the pistons would activate and break the sugarcane once it grows and would be collected in this chest. After, I just traded with my villagers, trying to level them up as much as I could. I started a small melon farm, and then I finished the sugarcane farm by putting glass on the front. To top it off, I lit up the area around it, and I saw that it was already working. Day 61, I found myself in the nether, going to the fortress in search of netherwort for potions. Unfortunately though, the fortress I found didn't have any netherwort to be found, so I had to find another fortress. So I went back home to stock up for the journey, was ambushed, but I made it back. My plan was to ride around on a strider looking for a fortress. So I crossed through many biomes on strider and on foot, until I finally found another fortress. I used twisting vines to scale the fortress wall and was warmly greeted by the local wildlife. And after all of my travels, I finally found the netherwort I was looking for. In fact, I actually got double. And accidentally, I got a wither skull after killing this wither skeleton. Then, like the MLG pro that I am, I landed this vine jump off the fortress. I found another fortress while I was traveling home in this crimson forest. And here too, the local wildlife gave me a warm reception, and I ran through the fortress, exploring and discovering loot. And soon enough, I had 3 wither skulls from killing skeletons without meaning to even get them. I got another one not long after and found diamonds in this chest. Then I abandoned the Strider and I made my way back home, not without stopping for this view first. Once I got home, I set up my netherwort to grow next to the sunlight. And while I was observing my villager breeder, I decided that now was the time. I felt that I was finally ready to fight the Ender Dragon. So I started preparing all the resources I would need: potions, gapples, food, blocks, and obsidian to set up a portal in the stronghold. I took one last look around my world, as this could be the last time that I ever see it. But I was determined to make it back alive. So me and Bruno set off on the journey of a lifetime to find the End Stronghold. It took us the whole day to search for it, but we finally discovered it near the end of the day. I navigated and looked around the many corridors of the stronghold until I finally found the portal room. But as it turns out, I didn't bring enough Eyes of Ender, so I had to go back to my base to get one more. So I just set up the nether portal in the stronghold room and made my way back home with Bruno. Once I got stocked up again, I went to the nether to link the portals together so I'd be able to get to the stronghold easier. Now that I was finally back, I placed the last Eye of Ender, completing the end portal. I double and triple checked everything I had in my inventory one last time, and without hesitation, I jumped in. The fight was underway. I began by taking out the end crystals with my bow, and I had my first close call with the dragon. But systematically, I took out almost all of the crystals. The dragon then perched near the middle, so I potted up and I went in. I did some decent damage, and then I took out the last crystal. I went back into the middle and did some massive damage before being thrown out by the dragon. I resorted to bowing it, and then I got its HP so low, it was so close to being dead. I bowed it once, waiting for the perfect shot to connect, but she kept forcing me to move around because of her fireballs. But none of my shots even connected with her. I wanted to have a good angle when I took this last shot at her, but by the time I took my shot, it was too late. So I was forced to go in and finish her off myself. And with just 2 hits, I had done it! And as she vanished into the night sky in a brilliance of flashing pink light, I was so proud of what I'd been able to accomplish by myself in this hardcore world. Feeling content and victorious, I collected my XP. With the Ender Dragon behind me, I still had 2 other goals that I had to achieve. And I still had to get Elytra from the End City. So with this in mind, I set off to get my Elytra. I couldn't believe my luck. I'd spawned right next to an end city with a ship. I was greeted by the local wildlife, which began shooting floating balls at me. Upon defeating them though, I was given a shulker shell, which would be very useful to me in the future. I then made my way through the city until I reached the ship. I bridged my way over to the ship, and I got all this really good loot from these 2 chests in the ship. But I finally got what I came here for, my new wings. And I couldn't forget the dragon head either. And with that, I took flight, my first time flying in this world. And I was home. I put up some banners that I collected in my adventures and made a blue and lime shulker box. I then put mending and unbreaking on my elytra, so now my elytra would last for way longer. However, I was gonna go back to the end, and while I was here, I might as well grab the dragon egg since I would probably make a display case for it in the future. And then I went looking for some more end cities, the real reason for why I came back to the end. I got some real good loot, and I was even put through the gauntlet. After looting that city, I found another city and took its loot and its elytra too. Then I went back home and I put mending and unbreaking on the other 2 elytras. I was so rich now. And now that I was home, it was time to take care of this chicken infestation that had happened on my land when a creeper blew up the pen. Then I upgraded my lights in the base with redstone lamps. And lastly, I made this librarian sell me some Silk Touch books. Days 77 and 78, I gathered materials for a new project. This time, I would build an iron farm which would help me get infinite iron from iron golems. So I started by building the collection system, and then I moved on to individual villager pods, where the villagers would be kept. In between building, I took a break to fly around on my new wings to explore further out. I looted any structures I found, since even though I was already incredibly rich, there was a chance of getting an enchanted golden apple from these naturally generated chests. Overall, I got a pretty good haul, and then I made my way back home. My iron farm was starting to take shape, and I had pretty much the outline of it already done and ready, so all I needed was to bring in my villagers and the zombies so it would work. And by the end of day 85, I'd finished 1 pod of the iron farm. And I found this zombie villager while I was building, which I determined I would turn into a shepherd who I could make profit off of by selling wool. I tactically threw my Silk Touch pickaxe into the collection system on purpose, of course, but unfortunately it didn't survive the lava on its way down. Where's netherite when I need it? But regardless, I continued working on the farm, and I had the second pod finished by day 88. And it seemed to already be working. It was producing iron like crazy already. Day 89, I began cooking up some potions and getting materials together to achieve a second goal of mine, getting full netherite armor. So, I headed off into the nether and started my own strip mine. And not long after, I had already found my first 3 pieces of ancient debris. Anyways, I started using beds to find debris, and I must say, I was finding a lot of it. I used Silk Touch when mining these gold ores, because in case you didn't know, you can get 1 gold ingot from smelting these nether gold ore blocks, and I was finding a ton of it while I was mining. Using TNT was much more safer and more controlled, so in the future I'll definitely have to build a gunpowder creeper farm. But just look at all the resources I got from that mining trip. And with the ancient scraps crafted into ingots, I turned all my diamond armor into netherite. Time to suit up again. And then with the leftover ingots I had, I turned my sword and my pickaxe into netherite as well. I was pretty geared, man. And now that I was fully geared, I could face one last enemy that I had worried about for this challenge, the Wither. So I prepared everything I would need. Gaps, food, potions, even milk, and then I headed down to face him. I wanted to do this the safest way possible so as not to risk all of my progress so close to the finish line. So I dug out a room leading down a long tunnel so I could kill him without being able to reach me so much. Getting ready, I placed down his body in T formation, and I looked at myself one more time, in case this would be my last. I double-checked everything. I pre-gapped, and then I spawned him in. I ran away from it, since it would start its attacks with a huge blast, and I got my bow trained on it for when it would start to attack. And he was off! I bowed him from long range, and he was trying to make his way to me, pushing through the tunnel. Soon he was in melee mode, and my arrows no longer worked on him. I was forced to go in and finish the job. I felt the strength coursing through me, and glancing at his health bar, I felt more assured, seeing that he was going to die soon. And all it took was a couple more blows, and he was dead. I couldn't believe how easy it was. In fact, I would say I was pretty over-prepared. He had left another star in its place, so now I could make a beacon using the iron I had. And it looks like he left me a present too. So I crafted my beacon and I made some iron blocks. Now I only had enough for 2 layers of iron, but in the future that would change for sure. Placing my beacon, I stood back and watched it light up in glory. I used it to give myself speed boost, but it didn't reach so far since it only had 2 layers. That night I filled up some creeper holes around my land and started flattening out this section since the place where I kept my villagers now was too cramped. So I transported them all here to a bigger temporary home. Day 96, I just spent doing housekeeping on the farm, and day 97, I gathered some more materials for one last project. I just wanted to show you guys how pathetic this skeleton was. It's like he wasn't even trying to hit me. But I started laying the foundation for this next farm, which would be a fully automatic melon and pumpkin farm. And by day 100, I had almost all of it complete. And the rest of that last day, I spent flying around. I just wanted to take in my world and everything that I'd made of it. It was so truly beautiful. I decided I wanted to sleep overlooking everything I'd poured my heart and soul into. So I slept on this 100th day on my roof. But there's still a lot more things that I want to do in this world, so be sure to look out for 200 days coming soon. Thanks for watching.